All right, I think we're ready to begin. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ed Arnold, and I'm Vice President of Products here at LeveragePoint. Today's webinar is titled Competitive Intelligence and Pricing. And this is another half-hour webinar in our monthly series of thought leadership in the areas of pricing, sales, and marketing, sponsored by LeveragePoint. LeveragePoint is the only software solution for value-based pricing. We offer a SaaS-based collaboration platform that links all cross-functional team members involved in building and executing a value-based strategy. You can find out more about us by visiting our website, leveragepoint.com. That's where you'll find a recording and download of the slides for this and all our previous webinars, plus other resources. Now, during the webinar, if you have any specific questions or comments, please feel free to enter them in the right-hand panel in the questions section. And then later in the webinar, we'll respond to as many of these as we have time for. Now, I'd like to introduce today's presenter. We're so delighted to have an executive from International Data Corporation. As many of you know, IDC is a leading global provider of marketing intelligence and other services in the technology space. And we're especially excited that we have IDC's top pricing expert, Brian Clark. Brian is Program Vice President of their Pricing Evaluation and Leasing Evaluation Services, and his expertise is widely quoted in the business press, including the Wall Street Journal, Business Week, and the New York Times. Today, he will be sharing some best practices for how companies use competitive pricing intelligence to make strategic decisions. Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Ed, and welcome everyone. Today I want to walk you through competitive price collection and analysis, and I want to pack in as much as I can through the with the allotted time. I'm going to focus on IT-related products and services because that's what we follow at IDC. But much of what I will talk about applies to all industries. So we're now in the golden age of competitive price intelligence. It's never been easier to collect competitive pricing data. But with that comes a level playing field. Basically, it's democratic. Competitors and customers have access to similar tools for comparing prices and doing various forms of analysis. Customers are well armed and competition may be as well. Thus, a vendor can no longer be smarter than their customers, and collectively customers know the competitive market better than you, using their smartphones to do price comparison while shopping, online, having alerts to do to take action when a price arises that they want to purchase at. So what we're finding is that there's, in effect, an arms race. There's more volatility, a washbowl effect of action and reaction. I exemplify this with what I'm showing on screen here, a particular LCD monitor in the life of the product of about 12 months had roughly 20 price changes to the product. Most going down, but some going up. Could be promotions, actions, reactions based on what's going on in the marketplace, and that's very typical of an IT product. So with the counter effect of this ease of collection is a growing complexity of competitive pricing data. Basically, more data equals a glut of information. There's a trend towards marketing custom or build-to-order solutions. Basically, it modularizes the offerings into endless pricing combinations. We see this certainly with servers, build-to-order servers, software configuration. I think it really applies to all products, including products outside of IT, where the consumer wants a custom solution. And with that becomes a need for more specific pricing to each type of solution. We also have many more markets to cover in terms of geographies. There's more buyers out there across the world. not just the new big BRIC countries like China, but also smaller countries such as Thailand and South America that are now important on the world market that need to have structured pricing if you're a vendor playing overall in the world market. In addition, we have shortened product life cycles. So not only are there more customers and geographies, but there's also more products compressed into a smaller life cycle of time. So there's a need to follow that pricing through its life cycle more consistently. We also have more pricing models, especially in the IT space. It used to be we would price software, maybe price a physical product. Now our product can live as software as a service, can live strictly as a service element, priced as a utility for time or action used. And that adds another layer of complexity to following pricing. So many of you on the line may follow under as somebody with pricing their title. Certainly there's a trend towards having dedicated pricing professionals in the marketplace. And based on even what I show on the screen here, some recent job search titles, the descriptions almost always mention or require gathering competitive pricing intelligence. However, the real job is a little different. The tools tend to be inwardly focused when you're on the job, such as customer CRM software, which may be great and has a lot of your own company data as input, but you may find that the outside view is not always readily available. When it comes to doing competitive pricing analysis, a lot of that is left to ad hoc spreadsheets, such as looking at bid analysis that you gathered from the sales force, maybe doing some ad hoc web collection. But it's generally, in many cases with a lot of our customers, not systematic. Now there is a ton of pricing available in the public domain. There's published price lists from the GSA at the state level. There's online stores, both vendors as well as retail. There's even the bricks and mortar all generally have their pricing available online even before you go to the store. There's ways to monitor media for ads and promotions. And many tools also support this realm in terms of web harvesters, spiders, scrapers, optical character recognition software. Of course, there's cheap labor, nearshore, offshore, to make use of collecting this data. And also, there's many tools for data collection in the age of big data. It can be as simple as an automated spreadsheet or as complex as a large-scale business intelligence tool. However, despite all this, you're really not capturing the complete picture when it comes to pricing. So vendor and retail pricing typically reflect only MSRP or single quantity street. And that's really just one view of the market. Published contracts may show discounts, but again, that's only to one buying segment. If you're looking at a state list or GSA list, you're really just looking at academic or government pricing, and sometimes it's questionable what you're looking at in terms of timeliness. What we find is a large segment of enterprise products have minimal pricing on the web. Even when pricing is available on the web, it's sometimes hard to determine, and there's always going to be anomalies that are hard to ascertain what's going on. I want to show you a specific example of this. So CDW, respectable website, we just came across this last week where a customer is questioning one of our prices, which was showing in Canada of $271 for this particular NEC monitor. So in looking up in our sourcing coming from distributors and other sources, we found that this product, in fact, was discontinued in May of 2011, had a list price cut in that time frame that brought it below the CDW price. So thus, in theory, even though this is a price that's readily available, web scrapable. It's really not reflective of the marketplace. It's not reflective of 19-inch monitors, so thus it's out of context. And I guess what I'm trying to say is while there's a lot of pricing out there in the public domain, it's really the context that's important when you're looking at a price. So getting to the whole pricing story basically requires that we dig a little deeper. There's no single price. We have to place pricing into context. How we expand price collections here at IDC is we also view other forms of pricing. One would be special bid. That would be more like the transactional price that is negotiated between the vendor and the end user, typically as a one-off special bid. Of course, the customer buy price or transaction price, that can be anywhere from a single quantity price all the way up to a Fortune 100 customer buying hundreds of thousands of units of one product and getting an especially good deal. We also want to look closely at channel costs because that really drives the framework of what the transactional price will be. And we combine this with supporting data. And this is the context element where it's great to have the pricing at all different levels, but let's look at it in the context of the feature set of the product, of the sales rank of the product. We may be looking at a product that's not really meaningful in the market. There's not a lot of sales, or there's no sales at all. There also could be other pricing impacts, such as promotions, rebates, inventory, either a glut of inventory or the products on back order, that may make this particular product that we're looking at relevant or not in terms of how we want to scope out our analysis. So in addition, we want to build analysis that's flexible and repeatable, and I want to show you a couple approaches in the upcoming slides of how to do that. Now there's many lenses of pricing. A product or service can have a number of combined pricing lenses depending on its, actually each with its unique set of pricing. So when you think about, let's say, a product with a list price of $99, well, that could be deceiving. A product actually has many prices. It may have a recommended selling price of $99, but if a corporate customer is buying it, they're going to pay maybe $80, or if a government agency is buying at $70. Also, depending on the volume, which is another lens, there could be a whole structure of pricing that's established depending on how many seats are bought. Up to 100,000 seats could be very low, $20, if it's software, for example. The range could actually go above $99 in theory. There could be an overseas uplift if you're buying the product, let's say, in India or some other region. There could be an uplift on top of the US price when you look at currency conversion. So there's a wide range of prices, and showing a price without its context can be dangerous in how you're reflecting it into your analysis. So here at IDC, we've enhanced competitive pricing intelligence with additional feeds and tools. Now we've really focused on the feeds and bringing in feeds that are consistent, fresh, and proven. What we found is, after doing this over the years, is that you need to have a history with the feed to prove its reliability for being consistent on time and showing accurate results. So having time-tested feeds for street pricing, for rebates, for promotions, for channel inventory, cost pricing, etc., allows us to feel confident with what we feed into our database. And likewise, if you're doing this on your own, you'd also want to build up a history and test each one of your sources for information over time. And on the back side of things, or front side of things, on the reporting, we want to make sure that it's reliable and repeatable. I'll show you a couple examples of these, but whether you're building spreadsheets or doing, let's say, some sort of BI analysis, there's a lot of flexibility that needs to take place with reports, because there's many pricing changes that occur, and there's also specific needs of showing pricing in its proper context. So you want to have reporting that offers that flexibility. Some of the reporting that we do at IDC, we've built a back-end Excel API that provides this flexibility where you can look up into any one of our databases for street pricing or rebates or promotions and pull in the most accurate, latest, up-to-date price. Now here's an example of this taking place. What I've done is captured on the upper right-hand side HP Quick Specs. This is for a particular server. Basically, you can upgrade the server with memory, and what HP does is provide a cast of part numbers on their website. So I've copied and pasted those parts into a spreadsheet, and then using our lookup functions, I was able to bring this page to life by adding in channel sales data, list pricing, cost pricing, if there's any promotions or rebates along with the history. And this really brings the pricing into context. So if I were Dell, HP, IBM, or especially if I were like a third-party supplier like Kingston or Viking that feeds off of price discrepancies for options and upgrades, I can now tell what parts to keep track of. In this case, you can see a part with 95,000 units of channel sales priced at $169 in the middle there. That's probably one to keep an eye on if you're a Kingston, and make sure your part's just that much lower than that part over time. So, this is a classic example of how you can make sense of public data and then mesh it with additional data and tools to really make your analysis stand out when it comes to competitive pricing. Another thing we do for certain categories is, especially with categories that were modular in nature, such as storage devices, storage systems, is we have a web-based tool and then build distinct product configurations, as I'm showing on the screen here. Also, we have detailed specs, detailed service pricing, so that a vendor or even a user can compare actual built solutions side by side. And as you can see, these are multi-million-dollar solutions compared side by side based on the terabytes of data and other sort of functionality that is in each one of the solutions. And these elaborate web interfaces, it works well with networking, works well with storage. I'm sure outside of IT, there's many solutions where this would fit as well, where it comes in handy to be able to look at the solution in the context of its modular configuration. So here's another slide where I've taken a closer look at pricing using our Excel API that does lookup. In this case, it's Web Gateway. And why I chose this as an example is because it combines all the complicated elements of pricing. There is the lens of, we want to look at all the different international geographies. I'm just looking at the US here, but this could also be UK pricing or any other geography. I also, because it combines hardware, software, and services, it combines the element of price banding. So basically with software, the more you buy, the cheaper it gets, and that's shown down below. But then up above, it combines that with the hardware cost and the software cost, and we've summarized this into an overall comparison showing, okay, how each vendor compares when we build the overall solution, do a 3-year total cost of ownership, and can show actually big disparities in price. One vendor can be $43,000, another vendor can be $20,000. And that's what will lead to value-based pricing, is how do we bring out why there are differences, because there's probably good reason why there's differences, but that's not really spelled out in the analysis just yet. Before I pass it over to Ed, I do want to just kind of summarize what I talked about here, and that is that if you're a pricing manager, typically your tools to do competitive pricing are limited. However, given the accessibility of competitive pricing data out there, it's dangerous to ignore because consumers and your competitors are very aware of what's going on. The scope can be overwhelming, but there's many sources and collection methods that are available, both in the public domain as well as from services such as IDC, to help improve or enhance both the data feeds and the tools. So it's also important to keep pricing in its proper context. It can be very dangerous because there's so many ways to price a product, to cite a price without the context where it's being used. And thus, in order to take it further and do strategic pricing, we really now have to do a number of things, and one of those may be value-based pricing. That adds further context to competitive pricing data. If you're going to make a solid strategic decision, you need to understand the element of customer value and how it plays into the price differences between solutions. And with that, I'll pass it over back to Ed, who will talk through some specific examples of how this works in practice.
All right, thank you, Brian. And what I'd like to do now is show a screen from our application, which should be on screen right now. And we want to show, an example of how competitive intelligence can be utilized in a value-based pricing decision. We get asked by customers, where do you get data? That is a constant question that we get, and especially on the competitive side, where do we get data? And it's great that there are excellent providers of information like IDC, which makes this information available, which can be linked into our collaboration platform to make some pricing decisions. So what I'd like to do by way of illustration is to take a specific product example. And here we're taking something from the IT industry, and here we're talking about web gateway offerings. And in this specific example, we're talking about Symantec's web gateway offering. So that's the offering, the specific model number. And as folks who know value modeling will recognize, is that when you create a value model, you have to set a specific context to a customer. So here we're talking about the small business market, and you also need to compare it against a competitor reference price. And here we're competing, Symantec is competing with WebSense. And when you look at a value model like this, what you see right off is that there is some differentiated value that Symantec has for this customer group over their competitor. That's what this green value is all about. Now, I'll point out that the data that I'm using for this example is fabricated for illustration purposes. So it's just to demonstrate the idea of what value could look like. But we've identified 3 sources of value that reflect the unique offering that Symantec brings to this particular customer. And we'll say that differentiated value here is worth about almost $6,000. Now, you'll notice that when you're talking about a value-based price, it's not just the differentiated value you need to consider, because it's the total economic value in which you need to make your pricing decision. That is your differentiated value plus the competitive price. Now, in this instance here, we put an estimate of what the WebSense offering is, what the comparative offering here. And you notice here it's $12,500. Now, where the promise of linking to competitive databases like IDC come into play is that if I really wanted to find the real price or the most current price, I can actually search for it. And here we have a number of sources we can search from. These latter 3 are internal, but the external one that we want to talk about is what we call data library. And let me just do that again. I'm going to hit search. And here you'll notice, I'm going to take the value models off and search again. Okay. So what you'll notice here is these are all pieces of data that are found within a data library that's organized by this particular product, Web Gateway product, and that this information actually is sourced from IDC. All right? So, and you'll notice that this data has been modified recently. So this is the latest competitive pricing information we have that's for this particular offering that I can pull into my value model. I select it, and now it's added to the model, and you'll notice now that the total economic value has changed. Okay? So that's just a quick example of how we could link competitive information into value models. This will help drive not only the strategic pricing decision, but also will help create the customer-facing value communications materials as well as sales tools for sales. So in conclusion, your differentiated value, is relative to the competition. It's contextual for your customers, and finally, it's dynamic based on the marketplace. And that's why IDC and LeveragePoint makes a great partnership. All right, so let's get back to the slide deck. And we do have some time for questions. I've been noticing some questions coming in, Brian, during the presentation. Before we get to those, I just wanted to make a couple announcements about upcoming events in October that we're participating in. First, on October 12th in Pittsburgh, the Western PA Pricing Professionals meeting. There will be a number of speakers there, including Stefan Liaozu, who's CEO of Ardex, and Vernon Lennon of the Pricing Cloud. So, and we'll be there as well. So if you're in Pittsburgh on the 12th, there's some information there. There's also links on our website if you want to register. And then later in the month, the LeveragePoint team's heading down to Orlando for the fall conference for the Professional Pricing Society. I know many of you do attend the pricing conferences. If you're there, please drop by. We have a booth, and say hello. All right, so let's take a look at the questions. But before I do that, just thanks very much, Brian. I forgot to thank you for a great presentation. Learned a lot, and it's a very important topic to our audience. So if you have a little bit of time, Brian, can we ask you a few questions?
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right. All right. So to start, there's a few that came in that I thought were interesting. I know you kind of touched on this, but I was wondering, a lot of people seem to be looking for competitive pricing information on the internet. The question is, if it's not available on the internet, where should you go to get competitive pricing information?
Yeah, because I know I'd mentioned that a lot of enterprise, even though I said there's a whole wealth of pricing data on the internet, there's a whole score of it related to the enterprise, for example, that's not available per se. So that's where, of course, you might want to look inward at what's coming in from your sale. It might end up being bid analysis, right? Is a way to look at, okay, how did we compare in bids with competitors? There may be, depending on the industry, there may be some third-party services, much like how we support IT. There could be one for chemical or other industries that might be able to supply you with additional competitive pricing data.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was another question. I think you touched on it, but the comment was, okay, maybe with some of the examples that you used, which were more retail-like examples, but more enterprise software, which is not retail-based. Any comments on pricing for enterprise software products?
Yeah, enterprise is, we do a lot of enterprise software analysis, and as I was kind of alluding to, there can be 3,000 ways to price one particular solution depending on the lens that it falls under. I found where I try to start my analysis is just research and try to find a way to get almost like the decoder ring that the vendor uses to price their product. It could be a matrix of here's their starting list price, and then where they go from there in terms of discounts to particular buying group, discounts for volume, uplift or downlift depending on geography. And sometimes it's as simple as a pricing spreadsheet that has different tabs depending on customer. Sometimes we have to dig deep into distributor sources and then try to decipher it ourselves. It can be a lot of work, but if you get lucky, it can be easy if you spot a structured price list that helps to bring it to life and make sense of it.
Another question. You talked about the different types of price, the different types of pricing, and there was a question about street price. So what is the street price, and how do you determine it?
Yeah, that's a good question because there is no single street price. It's really, I don't want to say infinite, but there's a wide range of what a street price can be. So where we like to start is a quantity one street price. So that's really the price you would see on the CEW website or the Best Buy website. Or it may be, in some cases the MSRP, but that is just one view of what pricing is for that particular product. A street price, by definition, could also be the transactional price, which could be a discounted price. So whenever we report in our tools a street price, I always state either in the liner notes or in the title that it's a quantity one street price if that's what we're showing, so that the customer understands.
Okay. Hey, a new question just came in, and it's about the biotech processes and analytical chemistry industry, asking for resources for pricing there. I know that's a little bit of outside of IDC's span of industry, but do you have any advice for folks who are interested in those industries?
Yeah, maybe an opportunity to have a company come in and figure out that space. At IDC we do life sciences, but it's really in relation to IT. We don't actually study machines or technology, and we're looking more at the software and the actual IT hardware that goes into that space. So we would have pricing of that, but yeah, I'm sure obviously there's a lot of pricing comes into the realm outside of that, and honestly I don't really know of any company offhand that offers in a third-party way competitive pricing intelligence for that space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are other IDC-like companies in other industries. We have seen them, and we know customers that use them. IHS is one that I've seen, but there are certainly others worth checking out. All right, great. Another question is in terms of regions and markets. Can you comment on how you're looking at pricing, Brian? Are you looking at it just in North America, or do you look globally?
Yeah, we look at it globally, and you can really, as I'm sure anybody who's doing pricing for their own company, you can get crazy with how many markets there are to cover and trying to connect the pricing between the markets, because in many cases products are configured differently and localized for each market. So it's not as simple as, hey, I got this pricing for Thailand, or I got this pricing for the UK, and it's the same part numbers, the same SKUs, and I just match it up. You actually have to almost like treat each geography as its own set of analysis. So anyways, we're an international company. We have offices around the world, so that does help us to have feet on the street to collect pricing. But I'm not saying it's easy, and even having a dedicated pricing service here at IDC doesn't mean that we have more than about 20 markets covered right now. Right.
And then finally, a question about how do you gather your information? I know you talked about the different sources, but can you just quickly recap sort of the main sources that you draw upon to come up with your database?
Yeah, so we talk IDC first and foremost. We talk to vendors, but we also, or they're our customers, but also some end users are our customers as well. So we also utilize them for competitive pricing data in our interactions with them. And then beyond that, we also interact with the whole ecosystem within. So that would be resellers and distributors, and they also provide a wealth of data for us. It's not to say I mentioned that anyone could go on the web and collect pricing, and we do as well. We employ web scrapers and low-cost labor to collect data, and that supplements what we provide to provide a whole turnkey solution. So I guess to summarize, we don't really get from one sourcing our pricing. We find you have to cover all avenues in order to get it right. And I'm not saying we always have a complete picture, but we try to fill in as much as we can.
Yes, yes, and getting it from customers is a great source. And I think at least in our experience, when you're testing value models with customers, they might not tell you the competitive price, but you can certainly get a reaction to how you're positioned relative to competitor, right? So you do get some signals just in the process of talking about value.
Yeah, and talking with a customer, it's a single point in time, and it's a single customer, but it's a very important point. But even then, it's just one point of light in many that you need to get the full picture.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so I think that's the time that we have. We have the contact information, of course, for Brian on the screen if you'd like to learn more about IDC's offerings and competitive pricing. One question that we're always asked is, when can we get a copy of the presentation and a recording? The answer is soon. We always provide it. And we'll have it up on our website probably within a week. Usually it takes to turn that around. So this will be available to be viewed at your pleasure. So with that, I thank everyone for their time. I thank Brian for the great presentation and insights. And until next time.